Here I've got a 2003 Toyota Sienna tier for front brakes, so it's getting pads and rotors. And the reason for that is because a while ago they took it to some other guy to get the front brakes done, right? So he did the brakes, and then it recently had to go into a Bell Tire to get new tires installed, and one of the technicians over there noticed something wrong with the front brakes. You guys see this? You may recognize it. That is RTV silicone. So this car is missing the hardware kit for the front brakes, and they didn't have it, so they substituted silicone, which I've never seen this before. This is crazy. And yeah, so number one, it's either complete lack of knowledge of the person who did this, or the person just didn't care. Actually, you know what? The person, he just didn't care, because the fact that he even had the insight to put silicone right here knows he's aware, or tells me that he's aware of the problem that comes from not having a hardware kit installed. These brake pads would be bouncing around inside the bracket. So this person obviously just didn't care, and these are not the type of people you want working on your car. Anyway, let me go ahead and fix this the right way. So I removed all of the silicone just to show you guys what it sounds like without a hardware kit. This is the noise you would hear every time you push the brake pedal. So this is why they put silicone in here, but I mean, that's crazy. I've never seen that before. You don't need silicone. Absolutely do not do that. What you need is a proper hardware kit. So that's crazy. So this is what the brake caliper bracket looked like after I took it off the car. You could even see this side has some silicone on it as well. Anyway, after sandblasting it to get all the rust and corrosion off, this is what that surface looks like. Nice and clean, looks like brand new metal, and it's ready to accept our brand new hardware kit. As you can see, I got a complete kit right here, so that would pop right on just like that, and another one over here. You don't need to use silicone if you have the correct hardware kit. And of course, I'm going to pull out the slide pins, clean them, and re-grease them. So after doing the sandblasting, I go to pull out the slide pin to clean and re-grease it, and look at this, guys. Look how nasty and corroded this looks. If someone was in here, I don't know, even within a few months to do these front brakes, the person who put the silicone on here, this doesn't tell me that, you know, this was serviced at all. This looks nasty and corroded, and it's been like this for a while. It's absolutely crazy how some people get away with charging other people for services, and this is the type of work that they do. So I'm just about done with the front left side here. You can see it has been completely transformed. We have a new rotor, new pads. Of course, hardware kit has been installed. The slide pins have been cleaned, re-greased, and they move freely. Everything looks good. Just want to show you guys something, that with the proper hardware kit installed, the brake pads are able to move horizontally. You can see they easily move like that. That is normal. They're supposed to do that. But when we try to move them vertically, absolutely nothing. So these brakes are not going to be clunking around every time the owner hits the brake pedal, and everything looks absolutely fantastic. Of course, there are some springs that have to be installed right here, but they go on right before I put on the brake caliper. So everything's looking great. If you're wondering what's this yellow stuff, that is corrosion protection. Of course, after you sandblast it, the metal it's bare metal basically, and it's prone to rusting. So I spray corrosion protection on everything that I sandblast to protect that metal, and it's gonna last a long time. So everything's looking really good on the front left side. Let me go ahead and repeat the same process on the front right side. Guys, we got the fluffies again. And of course, it's a Chevy Equinox. It's like all the Equinoxes come with this from factory. Anyways, you can probably hear this thing sounds like crap going over just bumps and cracks. So it's here for 2 front struts, 2 front lower control arms, and I believe stabilizer links, which sounds appropriate for what this car sounds like. Let me let you guys get a good listen on this. Holy crap, these brakes barely want to stop. Wow. It feels like a car that has like all the brake pads seized into the caliper bracket, like they're rusted in place, or rust jacking I should say. So the pads don't want to move no matter how hard you squeeze the brake pedal. The piston on the caliper can't do its job. That's what this feels like. Anyway, let's go back to the garage. Just getting to the garage here. I don't know, the bottom of that tire looks pretty bowed out. Same thing over here. It's hard to tell on camera. So it's already starting off good. As you can see, the wheels have a lock on them, and I just talked to the owner, and this is a new car to her, guys. You can see, I'm not going to show you guys, but it has the, you know, the temporary plate on the back, so it's new to her. I done searched this whole car, can't find a key for these wheel locks. So I called the owner, and she's like, yeah, I have no idea what you're talking about. So clearly the key is lost in this thing. So I'm gonna go ahead and extract each lug nut with the you know, that uses the key, and she's gonna stop at a auto parts store and just pick up 4 regular lug nuts. Trust me, ain't nobody trying to steal these rims. It'll be fine. So I lifted up the front end of the car. I was expecting to have like a bad lower ball joint or outer tire rod or something, but no, everything on both sides seems pretty solid. What I am noticing is that the strut assembly looks pretty much wrecked, and if we look at the shaft right there, you can see all the marks. That thing is not happy, so something's not right. This strut is definitely destroyed. Anyway, you can see on this side I extracted one of the wheel locks. Let's go ahead and do this side, and I'm just using like this spiral socket. You can see it's kind of like reverse thread, and it just barely fits this lock. Just kind of give it the salsa, and eventually it'll bite. There you have it. All right, guys, so I'm just gonna go ahead and dig into this. Just nuts and bolt stuff, really nothing crazy to see here. You can see this strut right here is leaking like crazy. So yeah, they're both blown out. I think the one on the right side is obviously worse. But you know, this looks weird to me. The ABS, or the speed sensor for the wheel bearing. Maybe I'm wrong, but I always thought this harness came over the knuckle, not under it, because you can see how it's coming in contact with the CV shaft right there. So I'm gonna go ahead and fix this when I put it back together, because I'm pretty sure this thing is supposed to run on top. Anyway, not a big deal. I'll get it knocked out. So the front left side is all wrapped up. Everything went pretty smooth. Everything's torqued down and good to go. And of course, I ran the harness up top. I went and checked the right side, and sure enough, this harness does go up top, just as I suspected. I did have to move this clip, because if I put it where it belongs, like facing this direction, it was just stressing the wires too much. I don't think that's gonna go anywhere, so it'll be fine. I gotta put the axle nut on and torque that down properly. I don't know if I showed you guys this, but here goes the bushing for the lower control arm. Absolutely destroyed. So all right, let me go ahead and knock out the right side. So I'm all done with the suspension work. Car's back on the ground, and to be honest, the wheels don't look any better than they did before. They still kind of look like negative camber. I don't know, it has to go in for a wheel alignment either way, but I decided, because the oil light is on the dash, so I'm like, let me check the oil. First of all, the little bit of oil that I am seeing in here is like super black, like it hasn't been changed. So when the owner dropped off the car, she actually asked me, what's this light for? I told her, oh, that means you need an oil change. And she's like, oh, I didn't know that. So there's that. Anyway, oil is like super black, and the dipstick is reading empty. Yeah, well, how do you know the oil is black if there's no oil? Well, a little bit of residue comes up on the dipstick. You get what I'm saying? So yeah, let me pour some oil into this thing. Of course it needs an oil change, but just so that we're not driving around with low oil, you know what I mean? All right, so I just added oil. Yeah, this thing was like completely empty. And just in case you're wondering, I did add used oil. Okay, before you get your panties in a bunch, I'll have you know that it was full synthetic oil, and it came out of my own personal car, so I know it's relatively good oil because I change my oil on time always. Okay, all right, and let's just say this. Okay, the owner drives away with no oil in it, and the engine locks up, and then I tell her, yeah, I knew it had no oil in it, and I just sent you down the road. You think she would rather hear that, or the other option, which is, yeah, I knew you had no oil, so I added oil. Granted, it was used oil, but used oil is better than no oil. And if you ask anyone, hey, you want your engine to blow up, or you want me to add used oil? Guess what? 99.9% of people are going to say. All right, so all right, so I've been in the car for a total of 3 minutes, and I can already notice a big difference on how it drives. First of all, it's not as loud. The front suspension doesn't sound like a bag of rocks going over bumps. Sounds as good as a 2006 Chevy Equinox can sound. Yeah, big improvement. Sounds way better, and the car feels like it has a bit more control. Before, it's like all this steering wheel movement just equaled nothing. Yeah, big improvement all the way around as far as the feel of the car and the sound. So the owner is going to be happy. Of course, this turd has to go in for a wheel alignment. Guys, I just noticed something while driving. In the lower right hand corner, that's where the light was on for the oil. It's gone. You know what that tells me? That was never a reminder or a maintenance reminder for an oil change. That was literally the light saying that there's no oil in the engine. That's crazy. Oh my goodness. I can only imagine how long she's been driving with that light on. Alright, so I just finished the test drive. 126K on this turd. And I believe the owner just bought this car. So, I mean, that's not good because it was pretty rotted underneath. You could tell this car has not been maintained at all. It just kind of needs everything. The brakes feel like crap. And not to mention, let me turn on the light for you guys. You see how dark the carpet looks? That is a wet carpet, guys. She said ever since she got the car, this carpet right here constantly stays wet, and it sounds like there's water sloshing around somewhere inside the car as she drives. I told her, well, these cars that have like a sunroof or a moonroof, they tend to leak pretty bad when the drains get clogged and it dumps the water. You know, it'll work its way down the A-pillar and right down here. So I think that's what's going on here. But you know, you can see we got other problems going on here. We got the ABS light on. We got the, I don't know if that's traction control because it's got a TC, or I don't know if it's has anything to do with tire pressure. It looks like a tire to me. But yeah, the car doesn't drive great. You can just tell it just lack of maintenance. So in my opinion, this was not a good buy. But you know, I didn't buy it. Guys, so it's like 9 p.m. I'm trying to knock out this turd tonight. It's a Dodge Stratus. I believe it's a year 2000. Yes, this thing should have been in the crusher a long time ago. But the owner just won't let go of it. These things are pretty much all extinct. You don't see them anymore. So anyway, this thing was bucking like a freaking horse, right? Like a bronco. And she had it towed over here. It had a few codes for like cam, crank correlation or something along those lines. And misfires. So I told her, when's the last time you had a tune-up done on this thing? She doesn't recall anything. So I told her, okay, let's change. Oh, and it also had a code for like coil primary number 2 or something like that. So I told her, let's do spark plugs, ignition wires, and the coil. It just has one single coil right there. And then I was like, let's go ahead and change the cam and crank sensor because I believe that's the main issue going on here. Long story short, put all the new parts on. Car's running great. Okay, I believe this cam sensor that sits on the side right there was the main issue causing everything. It was running nice and smooth, started up, took it around the block, running great. Okay, nothing like how it came in. Then the battery light comes on. Check the power at the battery while the car is running, and of course it's not charging, right? So I contacted the owner. I said, hey, how long has your alternator light or your battery light been on for? And I knew it was already on before I came in here because I did a full scan with my scanner when it got dropped off, when it got towed in. And sure enough, there was a code related to the alternator charging circuit or something along those lines. Guys, you're going to have to forgive me. But basically, there was a code for the alternator already stored when this car got dropped off. So that's how I knew. Let me tell the owner, how long has this been going on for? And sure enough, she said the battery light has been randomly coming on throughout the day whenever she's driving. So anyway, we're changing the alternator, right? And you go on Rock Auto's website. They got two options. They have something like a 90 amp and then they have like 120 amp. I don't know. Don't quote me on those numbers. But it was along those lines, right? And I had no way of telling. So I just ordered the 120 amp. Anyway, I get the old one out and it barely squeezed out of here, right? And this is with the coolant overflow tank was still in place right here. It barely squeezed out. And then I got it side by side, the old one right there, new one right here. I got them side by side and I'm like, oh crap, this one is physically larger. So I know, I'm like, you know what, let's see if it fits, because everything else looks to be in the correct place. And it was a really tight fit. You could just tell this car was meant to have that tiny little alternator in it, but it did manage to go in, and everything falls in its place. Everything is gonna bolt up just fine. I did have to get a longer bolt though, because the existing bolt for that alternator, the lower bolt where it like pivots, too short. It's a different design, so I had to get a longer bolt and put a nut on the back side, whereas the original alternator doesn't use a nut because the bolt threads right into the alternator. Not a big deal. Longer bolt and a nut fixed it. The belt or the pulley has the same amount of teeth, grooves on it, and everything still seems to align as far as the pulleys with the belt. So I think we're going to be okay. The post back here where the power cable goes seems to be in the same place, and the plug right here, everything looks identical. Okay, it's just a slightly larger alternator. And of course it's also getting new belts, because whenever you turn the steering wheel, the power steering was squealing like crazy. And I haven't loosened, this thing has two belts, I haven't loosened the power steering belt yet, but I'll tell you right now, that's way too loose, so that's why it's squealing. Sure, you could have just went in there and, you know, add a little bit more tension, not a big deal. But the problem is she has no idea when these belts have been changed. And if you look at this one that I took off, once you put some stress on the belt, there's definitely cracks everywhere. So I figure, you know what, we're changing the alternator, let's go ahead and change the belts, and I can put the proper tension on the power steering pump to get rid of that squeal. Kill three birds with one stone. So I'll keep you guys posted and let you know how this turd turns out. Hopefully I didn't make a mistake by ordering the wrong alternator. So I got that power steering belt off, and you know, I didn't watch any YouTube videos on how to do this. I just kind of tackled it myself, and I was trying to look at this, like, how does this tensioner system work? So I could see it has, my hand would get out the way. Okay, so I could see it has a bolt right there, right? And that was clear as day that I gotta loosen it. And I'm looking around, like there has to be something else that, you know, it needs 2 points of contact on where it tightens down. So I looked on the back side over here, and this looks like a sliding bracket. You can see this thing I'm pointing at with my finger back here, and then I noticed that there's a bolt coming from the back side, okay? And I'm like, that looks like the second point of contact. So I just went at that bolt back there and I loosened it. And sure enough, with this bolt loose and this one loose right here, the power steering pump was able to swing down and give us the clearance to get the belt out. So that's actually a pretty sweet design, considering this engine is crammed in here, guys. There's absolutely no working space in this engine. It's not even a big engine, and yet there's still no space in this engine bay. All right, guys, so I ran into another snag, and I know I'm gonna get the comments about this. I could just hear it already. Anyway, so I explained to you how the alternator is bigger than the original one, right? Everything seemed like it was gonna work. The pulley diameter appears to be the same diameter on both of them, but I ran into an issue when I went to install the belt. So in order to get the belt on, you have to adjust the alternator, because the alternator works as the tensioner system on this car. And you would push the alternator that way to create slack so you could get the belt on and off. And you bring the alternator forward in this slot right here to create tension. Well, because this alternator is physically bigger, I am maxed out right here, guys. I can't go any further, and the belt still didn't fit. The belt's on right now. So how'd I get it on? Well, I pulled the classic, get it on all the pulleys except for one. So I left the crank a little bit like halfway on, and then I turned the crank with a socket and a ratchet. Obviously I turned the crank slowly, and I walked the belt on. Guys, I can see the comments already coming. So here's the thing. since I had to do that to get the belt on, there's no need to put tension or do anything. Basically, this thing in its maxed out lowest setting, there's already enough tension on this belt. And guys, I don't feel like it's too much tension. This feels about normal tension to me, okay? I don't think it's excessive. The thing is, now it's non-adjustable. So what this comes down to is basically the next time this car needs a belt, or if this belt has to come off for any reason, the only way to get this belt off is to cut it off. So I got everything connected, okay? The power line is connected to the alternator back there. The wires right there, or the connector for the alternator, everything plugged in just fine. And I'm going to leave all of this stuff out of here. I want to go ahead, reconnect the battery. Let's start up this engine and see if it charges. Guys, if this thing charges, I'm gonna run with it. I'm just leaving it. It's done, okay? And trust me, okay, I am going to be honest with the owner. I'm gonna tell her the issue I ran into, where I screwed up, and what's going on, what I did to make it work. But on the other hand, if this doesn't work, if the alternator doesn't charge, guess what? I'm buying a new belt and I'm buying a new alternator out of my pocket because I screwed up and I have to fix it, right? Battery's reconnected. Everything sounds good. I got my multimeter right here ready. That's connected to positive. And we are charging. Nice. Everything sounds normal. I don't hear anything, crazy. I hear a vacuum leak, but that's because I got that line disconnected. So that's to be expected. But let me go ahead and turn this off before I die in here. Guys, I'm going to go ahead and run with it. It's working. And sure, you could call it butchery, hackery, whatever you want to call it. But it's working. Basically, I made it work. Is it the correct part? No, it's not the correct part. But the reality is this car is like one broken side mirror away from being totaled and just going to a junkyard. But hey, I'm glad it works. Okay, I'm gonna call that a win. It is time for the maiden voyage of this turd. All right, so I just pulled it out the garage, and what's nice is no check engine light. The engine's running nice and smooth. Like I said, this thing came in on tow truck bucking. And of course, as you can see, no battery light. Oh, and I just made that right turn and no squealing from the power steering belt. It was very consistent before. As soon as you turn left or right, it was just constant squealing. So, ooh, the brakes feel real good too. I forgot to mention that I also did the rear drum brakes on this thing. No squealing, no battery light. Now guys, I did go on Rock Auto's oh my god, I'm messed up today. So I went on Rock Auto's website last night because I'm like, okay, if they have a 125 amp alternator and the dimensions are different, then there has to be supporting mods that would accommodate the larger alternator, right? So I started looking for maybe, what could fix this issue, and the obvious answer is a longer belt. So the first thing I went was looking for the serpentine belt, and all the ones I found on Rock Auto, same size, guys. There is no difference as to whether you were using this alternator versus the other one. There was no option for using a longer belt on this car, so that was a bust. So I thought, okay, what's the next thing that could change? I was like, the idler pulley is super easy to change, and sometimes those vary in diameters. I mean, not by much, but it's something, right? And again, after looking at all the idler pulleys, they're all the same diameter. So I don't get it. I don't understand why a 120 amp alternator or 125 amp alternator is offered for this car, but what's the other supporting mods for it? You get what I'm saying? I don't know. I'm sure I'm missing something. I'm sure someone has the answer to it. And what do you think about this? Do you think I hacked this car, or do you think I made it work? Because in my opinion, I think I made it work. And here's the thing, when I said earlier that if the belt ever has to come off, you're gonna have to cut it out. Well, that would be me, because it seems like I'm married to this car now. The owner, ever since she found me, she only brings it to me. But the belt from Rock Auto, it's $6, guys. Come on, you get what I'm saying? It's not like it's a $30-$40 belt. So not too bad, honestly. If you got to cut the belt off for something stupid to go back in there, yeah, $6 belt, not that big of a deal. Anyways, this turd is driving as good as this turd can drive, guys. Like I said, it came in like it was ready for the junkyard, and it's still ready for the junkyard, but at least it's driving and it doesn't have a battery light on. So that's it, guys. I'm gonna go ahead, bring this thing back to the garage, let the owner know she can pick it up, and it's all set. Thanks for watching.